umaga sa ating lahat. Isa na namang makabuluhang talakayan ng inyong mapapakinggan ngayong araw na ito. Of course, kasama kayo upang makapagtanong sa ating mga panauhin. Kamakailan po binigay ni Pangulong Aquino kina Senate President Franklin Drilon at Speaker Belmonte ang draft ng Bangsamoro Basic Law. Ngayong umaga, hihimayin natin ito. Anong patutunguhan nito? Meron bang pitfalls na nakikita? May problema ba? Ito ba ay maipapasa ng mga mambabatas? Considering na, sabi naman ng ilan, may mga kokontra sa pinapanukala. Although, if we are to read press releases from the Office of the Senate President, mukhang smooth sailing naman. Pero ano ba ang kahihinatnan nito? Saan tayo patutungo as a country and as a people? Will it bring solutions to the problems we've been facing for decades? Kasama po natin si Atty. Basman. Siya po ang head ng legal team ng panel ng pamahalaang nakikipag-usap sa MILF. At narito rin po naman si dating Secretary Rafael Alunan ng DILG. Narito rin si Commodore Rex Robles. Siguro, we'll have the opening statements of our panelists on how they would describe the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Let's start with Atty. Basman. Anong meron sa Bangsamoro Basic Law?
Ang meron sa Bangsamoro Basic Law is a chance to finally allow this neglected and historically marginalized sector of society to grant them self-governance as ensured in our Constitution. So nandito yung mga detalye na magbibigay ng solusyon dun sa matagal nang nirereklamo ng sektor sa ating bayan na napabayaan sila. So ito ay ating solusyon para hindi idaan sa dahas ang pagresolba nitong historical injustice na ito.
Let's start with Commodore Rex Robles. From the military point of view, as a former Commodore, anong nakikita nyo? May kinabukasan ba sa Bangsamoro Basic Law?
Yung model ko kasi rito, hindi ako makakapag-comment masyado sa mga detalya. Nung pinag-usapan kasi hindi ko naman sinundan, ano? Pero nakita ko overall yung structure ng pag-usap, maraming mga kulang. Kaya ang tingin ko, lalabas na maraming obstacles and controversies that will arise even later. Instead of assuming na tuloy-tuloy na. Kasi kulang ng joint statement. Nangyari kasi nito, nag-usap si Presidente at saka ang MILF doon somewhere outside. And the agreement was quite informal. Ang experience ko sa negotiations with the United States is that it's very serious. The people talk about what both presidents will do, but just to make it short, there is a structure that our government seem not to have found important. Hindi nila sinunod, and for reasons of their own, which will be a cause of problems later on.
Okay. Secretary Alunan, from the point of view of former DILG Secretary.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say that peace is everybody's business. Everybody should get involved. It requires a whole-of-nation approach. Peace has been very elusive in Mindanao. A good example is the fact that while I was very much involved in the backdoor negotiations with the MNLF, that resulted eventually in the GRP-MNLF peace agreement. Peace is something that is not achieved when a peace agreement is signed. The work begins after the agreement is signed. And all the parties involved, especially those who live side by side each other in Mindanao, have to will it. They have to want it. No? It cannot just be imposed from the top. So the same principles should apply to the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Now, from what I understand, in the past year and a half or 2 years, there have been a lot of rumblings from various quarters in Mindanao, from both the Muslim and the Christian side, about the lack of consultations. While the government refutes that, by saying that they've properly consulted all the sectors, there are a lot of rumblings from various sectors that, notwithstanding government's assertions that everybody's been properly consulted, it seems that that is not so. And so I fear that the Bangsamoro Basic Law may find rough sailing when it goes through the legislative mill, when both houses of Congress scrutinize it and check for due diligence. In the quest for peace and thirst for peace, it's not good enough that we have the right intentions, right? We have to do things right. Things have to be done properly. And a law such as this that has far-reaching repercussions or implications way into the future, affecting many generations down the line, whoever crafted this must bear that in mind. They cannot pass a law for the sake of political exigency. We have to look at national security in its totality, where everybody is secure, everybody is happy, and everybody is backed up by a law that everyone agrees to.
Babalikan natin si Attorney Basman. I hope you're privy to what transpired during the conferences among members of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. Merong pagdududa yung mga katutubo na etsa puwera sila. How was it during the discussions, Attorney Basman?
I'm not a part of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, and they are a separate office from the OPAP. But definitely, if the IPs felt that they lacked the avenue for discussion during the BTC sessions, then they have more opportunity in the Congress. In fact, ang nasa-sense nga po namin, they have many champions in Congress, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate, because we always get correspondences from the Senate, from our legislators, following up on, even before this draft Bangsamoro Basic Law was transmitted to Congress, following up on provisions that the IP communities, the IP groups, especially those that are found within the prospective Bangsamoro, want to see there, want to be secured there. So what this roadmap, what this process that the government and the MILF secured until the passage, the enactment of the Basic Law, until its ratification, is an open process. So if as Sir Alunan said, there are sectors that felt that they weren't consulted, they weren't asked about how they felt about certain provisions in the comprehensive agreement and later on in the Bangsamoro Basic Law as it will be enacted, then they are open to pass on their sentiments to Congress, as our both committees in the House and Senate are trying to do, diba? They are always publicizing that they will be conducting hearings, consultations, and then going down to the ground, in fact, going to Mindanao to do that.
Okay, pero hindi ba dapat yung paggawa ng batas mula sa ibaba patungo sa itaas at hindi itaas pababa?
Actually, sir, you're correct. That's why yung BTC, the office at first draft the Basic Law, the composition is in such a way para makuha yung sentiments ng mga stakeholders for this Basic Law. So you have there 2 IP members, you have there from the Bangsamoro, you have there from the Christians or the non-Muslims, non-IPs in the Bangsamoro, para malaman yung sentiments ng lahat. But we also recognize that kind of composition will not ensure or guarantee na mas diverse yung discussion. But again, I'm not privy to the discussions of the BTC as I am not a part of the BTC. But again, the process that we have set forth from from the drafting in the BTC to its enactment in the law is open so that all sectors who felt that they were sidetracked by previous processes still have that venue to air their.
Thank you very much. But Commodore Robles, considering the kind of characters, personalities within the Senate and the House of Representatives, do you expect anything good from them? Do you expect, a thorough study of this draft?
Yung kanina, I was talking about structure of the whole negotiations. And I think that's where the problem lies. It's almost like an ad hoc arrangement where we wait for issues to be raised from both sides and mostly from the side of the Bangsamoro before it is discussed. And to me, it shortcuts a lot of things. Like for instance, is there a common statement by the President of the Philippines and the head of the MILF about what they want? Kasi ngayon, mayroong nagsasabi na the Bangsamoro wants partition or they want to be separate. If that is clearly stated in the common statement by the two heads of the group, no, I cannot call the Bangsamoro yet a nation, or kung mayroong statement kung ano ang ninanais, what they want to do, and then this common statement is followed by terms of reference, what are the things to talk about? Kasi natatapos na yung draft, mayroon pang mga issues na lumalabas eh. Ibig sabihin, catch can kung ano yung naisipan. Ay, teka muna, isama nyo. Ay, wag nyo na isama yan, magulo yan. Yung tungkol sa armas, wag mo nang isama yan. Ba't wag isama? Kung kasama doon, kung mayroong terms of reference yan, hindi mo pwedeng alisin yan. It has to be resolved. And there is, that's, ang tawag doon, Negotiations 101. I'm not inventing this. You just read any negotiation handbook. It says there that there is a step to be followed. Otherwise, you will have problems later on. Kaya I am about to answer your question, don't worry. The answer to your question is, there was an incident after the MNLF attack in Zamboanga, or while there was an attack, there was a meeting between, attended by a general, is a two-star general, dating superintendent ng PMA, I forgot his name. Matanda na kasi siguro ako. I forgot his name, but he said right there, I keep telling you people, and he told the head of the Philippine side, I told you to talk to the MNLF and talk to them properly. And you told me, no, never mind, hindi na, the MNLF is a spent force. Yun ang ano ko sa feedback. So the attitude of the panel may be well-meaning or well-intentioned to avoid certain basic problems was there. That is why when I was interviewed months before the attack in Global Network News, I said the MNLF problem is going to explode. But it exploded in a way that I did not expect. Because I expected the MNLF leadership, not Ms. Wari. Ms. Wari is an ersatz leader. He's just there, but he's not really leading the MNLF. He leads a group of people whom, if they're properly paid, they will move. But I'm talking about the new MNLF leadership, composed of young people who are intelligent, who are dedicated, and who are matatapang itong mga tao na to, and they want something also, and they have certain issues that have not been addressed. And I was expecting that this is the group that will cause problems. Instead, it was Ms. Wari's group, which is just fighting. Ang laban nila is to show the people who gave the money that they can create problems. Nung, kumbaga, na prove na nila na makagulo sila, okay na yung pera na naibulsa na nila. So it really does not have any political implications. And as you can see, wala nga. But I'm worried now of the MNLF younger group we have to watch that group. Pag hindi natin kinausap yun ng mabuti o nga at least pag hindi natin nakita kung ano talagang kailangan nila, that might be a problem.
So may similarity pala yung MNLF ni Miss Wari at yung ilang mambabatas. Pag may pera, aandar.
Oo, kasi may dumating na pera. I don't know if it's abroad or local, pero parang voucher hindi ba? Pag travel voucher, nag-travel ka, pakita mo yung ticket mo, yun na yung clearance. So, umatake na kami, ayan na, ginastos na namin yung ano. So, bulsa na ng pera, bulsa na nila. Yan.
Okay. So sa paghihirap ng marami, may kukonting nakinabang.
Mayroon ko kunting nakinabang na nagkapera, including Ms. Wari.
Okay.
Sir, if I may
Please.
add to what Sir
Dagdagan
Robles
natin.
said. Kasi just to clarify, we cannot talk of MNLF as if they are one or united. We have many MNLF factions. So yung the statement that yung MNLF is a spent force or MNLF has been sidetracked in this entire process. MNLF has a separate unit or / table in our office, in the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process. And we know that the process of the MNLF after, as Sir Alunan has said, after the conclusion of the FPA is now in the review. It's a tripartite review including the OIC, the MNLF, and the government on how the FPA of 1996 was implemented. So that process was still ongoing when September Zamboanga siege happened. So yun po. And yung talking to the MNLF, so that has continued. That was continuing even during the negotiations. Talking to them after. During the negotiation, so when there's a milestone, there's a new document that's been signed, the office, the panels talk to the MNLF, and at first, of course, it was very difficult to bring them on board to this process, to give them, to convince them to try this out, and then to give this a chance. But we see now that certain factions, like the faction of Mr. Alonto, the faction of Sir Sema, they have made statements of support. Some factions of the MNLF have made statements of support. And definitely the government cannot, as an entity outside of the MNLF, force the MNLF to unite, but what it can do is to convince them to try this out and see if this will work and see if there is an opening in this process for them to converge in this process for their issues. There is a document such as the 42 consensus points where the remaining issues of the MNLF are enumerated, and the government sees that this can be incorporated, integrated into, and converged into the process of the enactment of the BBL.
Okay. Pero may we have your remarks, Secretary Rafi?
Yeah, Rex was talking about ad hocism in the way the peace talks were conducted, and that people just, stumbled from one point to the next, trying to put together a cohesive picture at the end, rather than starting from a structure, a framework to work on. There are several words and acronyms that I'd like to impart, which guided us during our time under the presidency of Fidel Ramos. First was UST, Unity, Solidarity, and Teamwork. No? That was not a mere slogan. We lived that in the way we conducted ourselves. And when we talked about unity, we actually meant inclusivity. We brought everybody to the table, and nobody was left out from the start. Okay. The other is completed staff work, CSW. You don't submit a product for approval that is half-baked. That's the reason why you need unity, solidarity, and teamwork for proper coordination, communication. That's the Ramos trademark. And when you submit for approval, approve and disapprove na lang yan eh. But all stones have been looked under and turned over and looked into. And the third word is inclusive. No, it cannot be illusionary. Kunyari, merong inclusivity, yung pala hindi. No? yung bang pampakitang tao, hindi pwede yon. Dapat from the very beginning, kasama lahat sa usapan. At madugo man ang usapan, okay lang. But ang importante, lumabas lahat ang kailangan ipalabas ng lahat. When I adverted in my earlier remarks about the lack of consultation, it was not just the IPs that we were referring to. And I was getting this from the bottom feedback because I still have my links to Mindanao being the concurrently a former cabinet officer in charge for regional development of ARMM. So I still know the governors there, the mayors, and even some of the rebels who eventually became government officials. And they themselves say that consultations were not really done. It was after the fact, parang na fait accompli sila. No? And then the Christians say the same thing. Wala rin silang tunay na consultations. IPs, ganun din. No? So, while the intent is good to bring peace to Mindanao, if it's not done right, we're not going to have peace. We're going to have war. Magkakagulo.
So instead of achieving a milestone, what we have is a millstone that would drag us down. Yun po ba yun? Okay. We'll open the floor to our friends from the media. Let's start with the lady. Yes, please.
Tess Ramiro from Catholic Media Network, addressed to Attorney Basman. Attorney Ann, if you think the people were properly consulted, how come there are rumblings which you seem not to be hearing? That's one question. The other question I addressed to Secretary Alunan, Rafi. I was just wondering, do you think the President right now, Pinoy, is advised properly on whether the law should really be, the BBL, should really be passed on to Congress for further formal legislation? Because as former Secretary of the ILG, you would know the nuances of how it is to go within the office of the President all the way to the Legislative Department. And to Mr. Commodore Robles, Rex, from the point of view of security, given the nuances right now of the BBL and particularly the aspect of territorial integrity, do you think we could still have security and peace in Mindanao given the circumstances?
Let's start with Attorney Basman.
Yes, definitely. You will hear a lot of things about, a lot of sentiments about the entire process. And our response to that is, as I've mentioned earlier, to make this process open, to give as many avenues so that they can air their aspirations, their claims, their interests on this Bangsamoro Basic Law, on this peace process with the MILF. So definitely you have from the start that that continuing consultation. Although we're hearing now that we've heard this a lot of times that. It will never be enough. We acknowledge that. You go to the province after every round in Malaysia where the negotiations were held, but those will never be enough. That's why we've always said it's going to be a continuing consultation from the negotiations leading to the signing of the comprehensive agreement, to the enactment of the BBL, up to the last, to the referendum. So it's really opening this to hearing out what the people will have to say about this Bangsamoro Basic Law, this Bangsamoro political entity.
Okay. Yes, please.
I think there are some shortcomings as far as the advice given to the President is concerned. However, I think the law is already still not a law. It's still a draft law, and I think it's been passed on to Congress, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So now the onus is on both houses of Congress to look into the issue of whether the basic law passes constitutional and legal muster. Right? Now, if they disapprove it, then of course that goes back to the executive for further work. If they approve it, expect quarters to elevate it to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter. Okay. Now, because it was haphazardly done in the first place, there is this thinking in Mindanao that whether it is approved or not, there will be sectors that will be dissatisfied. And therefore, there will be trouble, right? Now, in the case of Bangsamoro, the term itself suggests that there is one homogeneous community, known as the UMA. But then we also know that there are many divisions or many factions within the UMA. And it's not just the MNLF, it's also the MILF. The MILF has at least 3 factions. And then there are breakaway factions. I recall that early in the days of the MNLF, when they began to discuss with the government on a possible peace settlement, Hashim Salamat broke away with Haj Murad and formed the MILF. And when the MILF started to talk peace with the government, the BIF was formed. And so on and so forth. There's a pattern of division that points to never-ending conflict in Mindanao. I don't know whether that's cultural. I don't know whether that's part of a long-term agenda that we still are not aware of, or whether it's just a product of mishandling. You know, that's something that we have to ponder as Filipinos and as people that live under the same roof. Do we continue being unruly and troublesome towards each other? Or do we sit down together and look at all the gaps that divide us and try to bridge it? Considering that we're all there is, you and I are all we have, and this is our only home.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I remember Commodore Robles and I were having dinner at Lantaka Hotel in 1992 when we saw Senator Rasul talking to some Arab-looking gentleman, and that was the start of the backdoor negotiations, right? We were having dinner at Lantaka, right?
Lantaka, yes.
Tama yun. Okay, so your thoughts, please.
About security, that's what you want to know. Well, I've not followed the newspapers. I read it maybe about once a week. But the thing that caught my attention is that hindi nila sinama yung tungkol sa armed groups, what to do with them. And as a throwback to my former point, dapat ang tiningnan natin nung nag-negotiate tayo is ano ba ang mga issues na hindi talaga na-resolve ng mabuti nung Tripoli Agreement. Kasi makikita natin doon, standing out, is the fact that the question of armed groups has not been totally resolved. What to do with the people and what to do with the arms. And that will be a festering issue whether we like it or not right now. Because we have not included it as part of our basic issues or terms of reference. Kasi kung may terms of reference tayo, pwede nating sabihin, well, sa terms of reference, ganito, ganito. Wala tayong ganun eh. Pagka we are confronted with it, either we are met with a stony silence or iba ang sagot. And the other side of my security comment is about intelligence. Where is intelligence in all of this? Are we getting intelligence about the MILF and the MNLF in the way na I surmise that there are young people dedicated and brave and can cause problems? Can this be validated? Can people in intelligence tell me, ay si Robles yan ang gumagawa na naman ng kwento? I would like to be told that I am not, because I am talking also, I have been assigned to Mindanao for 3 years working on different mines and South Cotabato, Sarangani, area ko yun. Kausap ko yung mga luma doon. At saka mga rebelde ang kasama ko sa motorsiklo. Hindi ka makapasok doon sa North South Cotabato kung wala kang kilalang rebelde. Ano ba? Sisingiling ka nila ng malaki. Kami, bayad namin 10 piso lang per head. No? That means may konti kaming ano doon. So, mararamdaman mo, ang intelligence natin, mayroon tayo, nakukuha natin sa mga sundalo natin because they're assigned there. And we should have, by this time, our intelligence should be properly funded so that they can infiltrate into the various groups in Mindanao na sinasabi nga ni Ana, marami yan, maraming MNLF, maraming MILF. Mayroon dapat mga intelligence groups tayo na pag wala kasing infiltrate, walang tao doon sa loob, you're reduced to guessing or surmising. So, dalawang factors yan. What to do with the armed groups and with the arms. And lastly, what kind of intelligence, level of intelligence do we have? Pag may pumapasok pa na balita na may IS pera dito, anong sabi ng intelligence? Silence. Walang sinasabi. Dapat alam natin kung talagang IS pera ba yan o galing lang sa Malaysia yan o galing lang sa... Kasi Malaysia is a regular interest, has a regular interest in fostering instability in Mindanao. Kasi ayaw nila nang magkaroon ng peace doon dahil sa baka makain na naman natin lahat uli yung ating grupo doon. So, and the ones who are advising them are the British, who are well acquainted with handling types of situations like that. So we must have ang DAP natin kung may DAP pa, bigyan naman ng intelligence, ano ba? Para sa akin, kasi sundalo ako.
Maganda yun, pero mukhang wala eh. Yes, Secretary.
Yes, I'd like to follow through on what Rex said. I'd like to add to it. And I go back to the GRP MNLF agreement. I think one of the enduring facets of that agreement was that there was a very clear provision for the integration of the MNLF in, for example, in the PNP and the AFP. Contrary to what was written recently in a newspaper, where there was no such thing as disarmament or integration. If I recall right, President Ramos issued 2 administrative orders, one addressed to the AFP and the other addressed to the PNP. After a lengthy negotiation and horse trading between Ruben Torres, Executive Secretary, who was the personal negotiator of President Ramos for back-channeling work, and Nur Miswari, Chairman Nur Miswari, who I also had the opportunity to have face-to-face dealings as a back-channel operator. Chairman Nur wanted 10,000 of the MNLF fighters integrated into the AFP and the PNP. Ruben Torres started with 5,000. Eventually, after a long series of negotiations, hinating kapatid, 7,500. 5,750 went to the AFP and 1,750 went to the PNP. And more than that, the Chief of Staff of the MNLF, Yusuf Jikiri, who I had the opportunity of working with to secure the release of certain kidnapped victims that Commander Robot grabbed early during my term, became Deputy Southcom Commander, and whose job was to assist in the disarmament and integration of the MNLF into the AFP and the PNP. Eventually, he became Governor of Sulu. And then another commander of the MNLF, apart from Yusuf Chikiri, and of course, Chairman Nur Miswari, joined the political mainstream, and that was Muslimin Sema. No? And Mus represented the MNLF in the mainland, while Yusuf Chikiri represented those that were in the island provinces. So The only drawback to that GRP-MNLF agreement was that, an agreement must be sustained. So therefore, succeeding administrations must be committed to sustain it. And if there are government deliverables that remain undelivered, it's their duty to do so. The lack of it cannot be blamed on the original signers or signatories of the agreement. The onus falls on succeeding administrations for failure to implement the agreement. But more importantly, the people of Mindanao themselves, those who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of that peace agreement, should push for it. They cannot be passive. Because after all, they will be either the beneficiaries or the victims of the consequences of implementation or failure to implement.
Okay, mukhang maraming leksyong matututuhan dun sa pakikipag-usap sa MNLF. Sana napo na rin sa pakikipag-usap sa MILF. Yes, Atty. Basman.
Yes, if I may just add to yung mga na-mention nila, sirs, about the issue of armed groups, other armed groups, the arms that are held, possessed right now by the MILF. Those were lessons learned kasama sa letter of instruction ni Presidente before the negotiation of this panel started. Kasama doon yung learn from the lessons of past negotiations and other tables and in the 17 years that the government has been negotiating with the MILF. Kaya lumabas yung annex on normalization. You don't find this in the BBL because in the basic law because this doesn't need an enactment of a law. This doesn't need to wait for the passage of the law before it can be started. It's in fact it's in the works right now. And this annex on normalization takes care of the issues raised by the two gentlemen. So, nandun yung decommissioning of the MILF, gradual and phased, meaning it's not one time, it's based on political milestones. Because we want the decommissioning, the putting of the forces and the weapons beyond use to be sustainable. Not one time and then when they find that the political commitments have not been delivered, as Sir has mentioned, that it becomes a problem, it becomes a cause to return to violence. So that decommissioning, putting the weapons and force beyond use is gradual and phased, and it depends on it is triggered by political milestones. So the commitment is to convert the lifestyle of these combatants, these former combatants, to civilian and productive life. So the commitment is to give socioeconomic development, and the MILF, to their credit, did not ask for integration. And the reason is because they didn't see that it worked with the MNLF. I would agree with Sir Alunan's observation that it really depends on the implementation. And with the problems on the implementation of that aspect of the FPA, on the integration, the MILF didn't want a repeat of that. If they want to, the agreement of the parties was if the members of the MILF forces, the BIAF or the Bangsamoro Islamic Armed Forces, want to join the AFP or the PNP, they have to qualify and then join. So yun po yung sa decommissioning. And then we also have aspects in the normalization on dealing with private armed groups, because MILF is not the only armed group that's known to everyone. So to ensure that the laying down of firearms of the MILF is not, kasi kulang yun eh. That doesn't solve the problem of violence or the unregistered or the illegal firearms in the region. We also have a program for private armed groups. So dito papasok yung mga issue ng private citizens who have held arms because they didn't feel that the government was protecting them enough in terms of security, or other more organized groups like private armies of certain families,
politicians.
Yes, certain politicians, and the others like the Abu Sayyaf group, the BIFF, and with the hopes of convincing them to take advantage of this of the socio-economic development commitments of this peace agreement, and use this for their betterment. That they don't need to resort to violence to achieve their goals.
Okay. Yes, Secretary. Rejoinder.
There are certain things I'd like to lay on the table because they remain unanswered, I think, to this day. And this is based on my attendance in various meetings where certain questions were asked and no satisfactory answers were given. I refer, for example, to a meeting between the business community and the negotiating panel of the MILF a couple of years ago. And at that time, their counselor and spokesman was Michael Mastura. An elderly gentleman from the business community stood up and said, I only have a very basic question. I just want to understand, based on everything that has been said, whether the MILF, one, adheres to the Philippine Constitution, and two, whether you consider yourselves Filipino. Michael Mastura gave a 30-minute interlocution, which didn't boil down to any clear answer. Okay? And, everybody had a question mark. Right? And then subsequently, as the details of the draft agreement came out, two words came out: substate and asymmetric relationship. Right? I mean, what the hell is that? Are we one country or are we not? It's undefined. There's no clarity in it, which means that it's subject to any interpretation. And when there's no clear-cut definition or meaning to those two words, you're laying the groundwork for future conflict. Okay. And if we are responsible stewards of our nation, regardless of religion or creed, we have to look at whether our decisions today will impact on future generations. The lack of it is irresponsibility, and we can't afford that. So we have to be very, very clear about our language. We cannot just throw caution to the wind and assume that everything will just fall in place because you have the right intention. It's not good enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Jerry.
Rejoinder. Sandali lang. Yes, please.
Definitely, I cannot answer for the MILF when they were asked and weren't able to answer the questions whether they were Filipinos or whether they abide by the Constitution. But I can speak for the draft BBL. In its first page, the Constitution was recognized. So because we believe that this Bangsamoro is taking off from the constitutional provision on creating an autonomous government, more self-governing this time, but still, again, in the BBL, still explicitly a part of the Philippines.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please. Please identify yourself and the entity you represent.
Mel Chavez, Asosasyon ng Komentaristas at Announcers Pilipinas. President. Mel Chavez, from Notre Dame of Kidapawan, North Cotabato.
Okay.
My concern is, paano ho nangyayari ito bilang kayo ho ang head ng peace panel? Na,
Legal team.
Legal team. Legal team. Legal team. Na mga 3 araw lang ngayon, bumbahan sa Cagayan de Oro, bumbahan sa Davao. Sabi ninyo, mapayapa na. Dahil nagbigay na ang gobyerno na nandoon mismo sa DAP. Kung nakikita ninyo, yung 8.5 billion na binigay ng gobyerno para sa armed o sa MILF o sa inyo, na dapat nakita ng tao na yung binigay ng gobyerno ay may resolba na. Pero hanggang ngayon,
Okay.
dahil ang kailangan natin, meron tayong paglalansag ng mga baril ng bawat isang mamamayan sa Mindanao. Pero hindi ho ginagawa ng gobyerno. Kayo ba'y naniniwala na magkakaroon pa ng kapayapaang magaganap sa amin sa Mindanao? O kayo naniniwala na dadaloy ang pera na galing sa Malaysia para guluhin ang Mindanao?
Okay, okay. So yun muna siguro. Easy, easy. Okay, thank you. Yung blood pressure natin.
Yes.
Kami po ay ever hopeful na magkakaroon ng peace sa Mindanao. Hindi po magic wand ang comprehensive agreement, hindi po magic wand ang BBL na in a snap lahat ng gulo sa Mindanao ay ma-resolve. It is going to be a process, it's going to be tedious, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be more challenging than the conclusion of the negotiations. Katulad nga po na experience na shinare sa atin ni Sir Rafael Alunan, mas mahirap ang implementation. Pero nakikita na po natin yung produkto nitong progress ng peace process. Sa panig ng engagement between the government and the MILF, simula noong 2012, up to now, zero skirmish ang government at MILF. At para po sa amin, ang isang araw na walang gulo sa pagitan ng this huge organized armed group at ang government, madaming mga tao ang na-save from having to be displaced, having to die, be casualties to violence. So yun po yung tingin namin doon. At hindi lang doon sa aspeto ng seguridad kasi nagtitrickle at nagre-redound din to sa ekonomiya. Ang ARM po ngayon boasts of huge investments. At alam naman po natin na kapag nagsimula ng magtiwala ang business sector sa isang lugar, ibig sabihin they see hope and promise in the area. And that is reflected in the boom of investments in that area. So yung na babalitaan po natin, alam nating mga surges of violence ay we remain hopeful that they will stop once this agreement has been fully implemented. Yun po yung masasabi ko.
Okay, any follow-up?
Follow-up po.
Please.
May kasiguruhan ba kayo na maipasa ng Kongreso at aayunan ng mga mamamayan ng 5 probinsya at 2 syudad ng nasasama sa ARM na itong Bangsamoro ay magiging tunay na bahagi ng ating lipunan?
Kung ang hinahanap niyo po sa akin ay isang definite guarantee na ito ay maipapasa at tatanggapin ng mga tao, hindi ko po magagawa yun.
Waste of time lang, waste
Pero
of money.
ito po ang aming sinisigurado. Ito po ay isang napaka magandang arrangement. Tinignan po, pinag-aralan po talaga itong arrangement na ito, itong struktura ng gobyerno na ito, lahat ng kapangyarihan na i-devolve, lahat ng not just the political powers, the administrative powers and functions, but the fiscal autonomy that is going to be granted to be devolved to the Bangsamoro as an autonomous, genuinely autonomous regional government. At umaasa po kami na through this ay ma-convince sa mga tao because we adhere to the principle of the consent of the governed. And we cannot impose, as Sir has said, we cannot impose this arrangement to the people. They have to say yes to the plebiscite that will be conducted after the enactment of this basic law. And if the people there right now are feeling the difference between then when there was no agreement, there was no talk of the Bangsamoro, and now that it's now in the works, you have, as I said, economic boom, you have more people being hopeful, the international community is more hopeful for this region, then we hope, it's our prayer that they will be convinced to say yes to this Bangsamoro.
Okay. Thank you very much. Pakikita yung muna lang, please. You will lose some calories if you do so.
Supposing it's gone through the legislative branch, but then the Supreme Court declares it unconstitutional or even parts of it unconstitutional like our DAP, what will you do?
Ang proseso pong ito with the MILF, ang isang kaiba dito ay yung mekanismo. Yun pong panels, yung government and MILF did not dissolve themselves when the comprehensive agreement was signed, meaning they still exist even up to now, because we want them to continue to be able to continue talking when there are issues that arise during this phase of implementation. So makikita natin nung nagkaroon ng issue about the review of the Office of the President of the first draft that was submitted by the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, it was a stumbling block. But because of the presence of the panels, their continued existence, there was a way to resolve it and move forward. So nakita naman natin now it has reached Congress. So yung mga next steps din po, this is not going to be an easy process. Madaming stumbling blocks, madaming hurdles until the creation of the base of the Bangsamoro, until it's actually even during the existence of the Transition Authority or the interim government, the first term perhaps of the regular Bangsamoro government. But we feel that because of the existence of the panels, when issues like those hypothetical situations arise, then there will be ways to resolve them, to talk about them. Yes.
I'm a freelance writer and I'm covering this particular topic for aletea.org and ncr.org, online.org. So I just want to ask a few things. First, you have repeatedly said that you are hopeful, and also I want to know where you hinge your hope. Why? I mean, can you be clear what are your sources of hope, particularly in terms of controlling groups that are not controlled by, I mean, who will control this BI? Kasi I went to a forum and they were discussing, like the guy, the gentleman from Notre Dame. It was replete with reports from WAO, and they were talking about the threats that even people were telling them, "O sige ha, it will be our time, kaya baliktad na ngayon." Yung ganyan ba? I mean, so paano yon? What do you have prepared? Why are you hopeful that these will be kept under control? No, yun yung isa. And pangalawa, if like it seems like this is a go, but do you have any provision, like a backup fallback position for just in case? Are you very sure this will happen in this administration? And if not, what then? Is this all? Do we start again from square one? Kasi Bina is saying he's left out of this whole thing and he's a candidate, and who else? I don't know who else will surface as candidate, but you know, it's been really a project of this administration. So what if just by, everything falls through?
So yung una pong tanong, ang goal ng parties, ng MNLF at ng government ay to ensure that everything is laid down during this administration. Nasa sa atin na po yun if we are going to elect as the next president in 2016 is somebody who is not supportive of this peace process, someone who will just do a 180 and disregard this peace process that has been lauded internationally, in this times na everywhere else there's war and there's no peace. We have this to be proud as a country. So yun po, we want everything to be established, start the implementation during this administration para lahat tuloy-tuloy na lang, implementation na lang. But again, as Sir said, it will be very difficult. Pero that's our goal, to establish everything during this administration. We are inspired by, and this is already going back to the first question, we are inspired by the statements of support of even the legislators themselves. In Senate, you have 13 senators signing as co-authors of this bill. So we are a bit certain that this is going to pass. The BBL is going to pass. The only question is in terms of substance. If the BBL version that will be enacted is going to still contain the substance, the meat of the agreements of the parties. Yun pong sa side ng groups that are beyond our control. It is our hope that that they join because of because of the substance again of this agreement na maganda siya, hindi siya magiging fake autonomy na in name only. At yung mga unti-unting nako-convince, yun nga po, kung dati wala kang maririnig na other organized group na nagsasabi na okay yan, pero unti-unti nakakarinig tayo na okay, we'll try this out. So doon po kami nabubuhayan na unti-unti may mga nako-convince na sige, subukan natin to, baka naman this time it will work.
Earlier, when you asked me for my opening remarks, one of the things I said was there's really a need to be inclusive in all our discussions, and I'm really dismayed that the one person that has extensive experience in negotiating a peace agreement and with extensive links to the United Nations and the Organization of Islamic Conference was never consulted.
And you're referring to Fidel Ramos?
And I'm referring to President Fidel Ramos. And the people who were involved in the negotiations with the GRP MNLF agreement were never consulted. And I can say that firsthand, direct knowledge. So this brings me to the second point, incompleted staff work. And incompleted staff work will always show the weaknesses of the finished product being presented, which is why there's a lot of negative sentiments towards the draft law. Notwithstanding the fact that there's every good intention to bring about peace, but as we used to say in the DILG, and Jesse Robredo championed this saying, good governance is about being matino and mahusay, doing the right things and doing things right. It's not good enough that we do the right things, but if we don't know how to do it right, bali wala. Lalong magkakagulo.
Pero hindi naman alatsamba yung approach ng gobyerno ngayon.
Well, it's the word is not chamba. I think people are really trying their best, but they should be humble enough to reach out to those who already have past experience and to consult them as to what worked and what did not work. But considering that they were left out of the discussions, I think undermined the quality of their work. No.
Okay. Yes, Commodore Robles, you got anything to add?
I was only nodding my head. I have to fully agree because in my experience with the Tripoli Agreement, which we actually participated in from the very beginning, nung nandun pa si Imelda sa Libya, kami na nag-uumpisa dito ng mga drafts and everything. So nakikita namin yung mga problema and nakikita ko yung galing at saka mga koneksyones ni Presidente Ramos. At si Presidente Ramos, kaya niyang, mag-uusap kayo ngayon, kukuha siya ng telepono, tapos sabi niya, nag-uusap na kami na, okay na yan. Right then and there. Kung nagda-draft kayo, sasabihin ni Ramos, okay na yan. So, saan ka kukuha ng ganun? Hindi mo makakuha yan sa galing, mga PhD, mga kung sino-sino. Hindi mo makukuha yun. You have to admit that there are things that you can explore or exploit from your own sa area mo. Kaya mo yon. But if you're afraid or hesitant to consult people for some one reason or another, doon tayo magkakaroon ng deficiencies.
Ibig niyo sabihin, yung papel ng mga academicians may not be enough? Kailangan mo ng tao on the ground? Yes,
of course. Academicians are good to be in the panel, but they are not enough. Because I can see the attitude is academicians will defend whatever it is that what they make, and that is not their fault. That is the nature of academicians, to say that they have done something right and they can come up with arguments. But what we are doing is the nitty-gritty. Kasi nakikita natin papel Pero behind this, yung mga nag-uusap doon, mga ganon, hindi mahirap malaman kung mayroon talaga. Kasi may labanan sa Mindanao na kaya ni President Ramos ayusin by calling Middle East, not by talking to the people there. He calls the Middle East and talks to somebody there. I don't know who. Hindi naman ako pwedeng magtanong sa kanya. Pero yan ba, pinalampas pa natin para gamitin? Parang ganon.
Yes.
Just an insight kung sinong kinakausap. When we used to deal with the Abu Sayyaf to recover kidnapped victims, ang nakikialam si Muammar Gaddafi. But the point of Rex is well taken. FVR had extensive connections and he had tremendous experience backing him up. And whenever there was a problem or an obstacle, and his people that he was depending on had reached the limits of their capability, he would step in and use his influential powers and his extensive connections to resolve either the dilemmas or overcome the obstacles. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The approved agreement, the GRP MNLF agreement, led to the granting of a peace award by UNESCO, by the United Nations, to both President Ramos and Chairman Nur Miswari. But even before the agreement, that agreement had already been consulted with local and domestic and foreign parties, including the OIC. We knew already that we were going to get international backing from the OIC because they were properly consulted. It was not, our consultations were never after the fact to make it appear like people were consulted. It was always before the finished product was submitted for approval.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. RV Castro po, a friend of Professor Basman before, my good friend.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. So I just observed, anak kayo. And we are talking of the Tripoli Agreement based on the term ni former President Ramos.
Tripoli Agreement was
Marcos, yes.
Marcos, but the implementation, so say there is a meat and substance that we learn from the wisdom of these,
1996.
our consultants. Do you think there is some kind of communication gap in trying to really determine what the specific substance needed by the minorities and for the other factions? Is there factions or polarization between MNLF, MILF, and the youth, the young BIFF, you being on the new generation? What do you think, attorney?
Yeah. Parang ibang tanong mo, matatanda na tayo.
Yes,
Okay,
but we learn from
Yes, of course.
the wisdom.
Definitely, as government, we cannot force, if there are communication gaps, and I think there are amongst these groups, we cannot force them to sit on the table and agree amongst themselves. Alam mo, nasa moro na yan eh, kung paano it cannot rely on the government for unity. So if there are communication gaps in terms of one group wanting something else, like we hear, BIFF wants independence, MILF is okay with this Bangsamoro that is within the republic, within the flag of one nation. It's up to the Moro themselves, ourselves, to resolve this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have more questions from the floor. Now, let me ask our panelists. Pat, may tanong ka? Okay. Secretary Alunan, during Ms. Wari's time, being a Tausug, he was not accepted by the Maranaos and the Maguindanaoans as their leader. Ngayon, meron kang Bangsamoro. How will it sit with the Tausugs, the Yakans of the other parts of Mindanao?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, the question I'd like to ask is, how united is the MILF? Because from what I understand from within, there are already 3 factions vying for leadership as to who's going to take charge after the Bangsamoro agreement is passed into law. And that's very problematic because if there's infighting for power, if there's a power struggle there, then you can easily project or anticipate that the implementation of the agreement will be faulty. So unity is a very, very crucial issue here between the two parties, the people of Mindanao, and because without unity, we're not going to get anywhere, no matter how well we speak, how glib we are about peace and development. If there is no sincere commitment to peace and development by all those concerned, walang mangyayari. This will just be a never-ending story.
Okay. At tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang negosasyon ng pamahalaan sa iba't ibang grupo na biglang susulpot parang kabuti. Ganun nga ba yun, Secretary?
I didn't understand what you said.
Dahil sabi nyo, merong mga lumalabas na grupo after a peace agreement has been signed with the government. So chances are we will be in a negotiation mode for a long, long time with other groups that spring or sprout.
Yes, never ending yan. Like I mentioned before, MNLF used to be one organization and then it split into two, like the atom. And may MNLF, may MLF, MILF. Ngayon, may nag-break away from the MILF, there is the BIFF, and then a portion of the MNLF became Abu Sayyaf, you know. And then there are elements within the MNLF, Abu Sayyaf, MILF, BIFF that fall under another umbrella. Ang gulo, no?
Do you think there is another Gaddafi today that President Pinoy can call should trouble begin in southern Philippines?
No, because the Arab Spring broke up, you know, many of these governments, and they're all in a state of chaos and confusion. Syria is fighting for its life. Libya is nowhere to be found. Egypt has recovered. Iraq is disintegrating, right? It's a sad state of affairs. This is not the way humanity is supposed to be in the 21st century.
Yeah. But was it true that in 1995 a group of 15 Filipinos went to Pakistan for training and nobody passed because nobody wanted to be a human bomb?
Well, Filipinos are very mautak. I remember somebody cracking a joke na you will never get a Filipino to become a human bomb, no? Because they value their life more. So when they had a foreigner trainer trying to train them to be a human bomb, the Filipino said, "Okay, can you please show us how?"
That's a nice one. That's a nice one. Okay. Isang bagay na mahalaga, last 2 minutes na lang ang Aquino administration. And Mr. Aquino, President Aquino, wants this BBL to be his legacy. Do you think it can be achieved, Attorney Basman?
Well, yes. We think even now, you see the positive effects of this peace process. Hindi pa tapos yung BBL, nasa Kongreso pa lang siya, pero nakikita na natin na even the people in ARM have more hope. They have raised their standards for governance in ARM. Ngayon nga, they are instituting reforms and they expect more from the Bangsamoro. And I think even that, yung raising the bar for governance in ARM, when before they didn't even expect the government to be there to be able to answer whatever they wanted, even how small, even how tiny. For me, that's a positive advance of this peace process, of this agreement, and I think there will be more in the days to come.
Okay, let me ask Commodore Robles. Without the PDAF and the DAP, do you think it will be easy for Congress to pass the Bangsamoro Basic Law? Because according to you, yung mga bata ni Nurmiswaring sumalakay, may perang natanggap. Ito kaya may pera ding matatanggap yung mga mambabatas para ma-fast track yung Bangsamoro Basic Law. Yes, please.
Baka mahirap-hirap na ngayon dahil sa binabantayan na yung anong nangyari sa budget. Pero I wouldn't want even my worst enemy to be President of the Philippines right now. The problems, para bang the problems nag-ripen all at the same time. To the point na ang pakiramdam ko, bumibigay ng gobyerno. Hindi na nila alam kung anong gagawin. Pag sumagot sila, parang mga lasing na eh. Yung hindi na nagkakatugma-tugma yung mga sagot. So, I'm sorry, but I've never been an optimist in terms of what the government is doing. Pero pessimistic ako na may magawa ang gobyerno, not only with the Bangsamoro, but with the other problems, ang dami noon.
Okay, Secretary.
Last 2 minutes na ito.
Last 2
before we go.
minutes.
Because if you don't mind, I have to.
Yeah, we will wind this up now.
Last 4 minutes.
Last 4 minutes. Well, first of all, I'd like to encourage Attorney Basman to continue fighting for the right things and to continue to articulate that doing the right things requires also doing things right. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we must have hope that eventually things will fall in the proper places and that we will eventually have peace. But then it's not good enough to be wishful thinkers. We all have to work for it. And whether there's an agreement or not, we should be working for peace. Right? The agreement is just a framework on how to have peace. But at the end of the day, people really know what to do. Right? It's whether they want it or not. Right? Sometimes an agreement can complicate matters. People can actually simplify their lives by just talking to each other and working things out. Right? So I hope that this agreement will actually bring about or usher in an era of peace that will eventually help both or all sectors of society build a nation for our children.
Maganda ito. Let's all hope peace will reign in the Philippines. And ang sinasabi ni Confucius ay simple lang. If sovereigns would act like sovereigns, and subjects would act like subjects, and fathers would act like fathers, and their sons would act like sons, then we're headed for a perfect society. Thank you very much sa Tapatan sa Aristocrat. Salamat po.